to Layer the Alchemist, where we discuss all things heavy metal and hard rock. On today's episode, let's discuss Alice Cooper's fifth studio album, School's Out, released in 1972. I was kind of surprised when I was getting ready to make this video and doing my research that, 1972, Alice was already on his fifth album, and I was just thinking that this was more like maybe 74, 75. Sometimes I forget how early in the 70s Alice Cooper was really doing his thing and how popular he was. This is kind of a unique album cover design. It's designed to look like a school desk where it folds up and there's like legs that pop out underneath here, and the record comes wrapped in a pair of women's underwear, so that's quite the unique design, and it's a little, I don't know if you can see that there, but it's got like things scribbled on it like one of those old-fashioned school desks there, so pretty cool. I've talked about Alice Cooper before, and how what I love about Alice is his ability to sort of play a character. I always think of Alice as a very theatrical style performer, like almost like a Broadway performer, and he's able to sort of take on these personas, one of them being the character of Alice Cooper himself. But this is my favorite era of Alice because it's the Alice Cooper band at this point. Alice hasn't gone solo. And I think that there's a lot of great chemistry here amongst the members of the band. You have, of course, Alice on vocals, Glenn Buxton and Michael Bruce on guitars. I think Glenn Buxton is a really underrated lead guitar player, great melodic playing. Dennis Dunaway, he's also a very underrated bass player that doesn't get talked a lot about when you're talking about the great bass players of the 70s. But I think that he's just a really cool, he's got a lot of melodic lines. He adds a lot. He just adds a lot to the songs, and he has a great bass sound that really jumps out of the mix. And Neil Smith on drums. And the producer here on this record is Bob Ezrin, and I've talked about Bob Ezrin before. He's one of my favorite rock producers. He really brings, and if you want to go back to the video that I made on what a producer does, I brought up Bob Ezrin as being a producer that adds a lot of musical things to projects that he works on. For instance, on this particular album, the album ends with a song called Grand Finale, which is like a sort of like the end of a Broadway show. It's got horns in it. It's kind of like this big bandish, kind of swingish type of thing, and it goes back and it quotes some things from earlier in the album, and that's Bob Ezrin right there. Anytime you hear a recording that Bob's involved with, and there's bells and whistles and flutes and brass instruments, that's Bob's influence right there. Bob's worked on things like The Wall from Pink Floyd. He worked on Alice Cooper's $1 Billion Babies, which is one of my favorite hard rock 70s albums of all time. Just a fantastically produced album, and I always love his stuff because you can put headphones on and you can hear a lot of stuff going on in the music, and you hear that in here. I would say it's not as heavily sort of orchestrated as $1 Billion Babies is, but there's still a lot of that on this album, a lot of great headphone stuff. The album starts with School's Out, which is probably Alice's biggest hit, the one that even if you're not an Alice Cooper fan, you would recognize that song. And it's cool, it's super catchy. I love the lyrics of it. It's fun. The chorus with it sounds like young kids shouting out the chorus. I think it's great. It's got a great riff. It's super catchy. I love the part with the "no more teachers." It's like a kid's nursery rhyme, but the lyrics are just fun. And the album, some people have speculated that the album is maybe sort of a loose concept album based around like somebody leaving school, and I could see that because there are some things here that sort of tie into that, and we'll get into that as we go along. Looney Tune is the second song, and that's a really fun one. I love the main groove in it. It has kind of like a funky I love that sort of main riff there. It's kind of funky, and it's a catchy, you know, Alice's melody line and everything is very catchy. Then you have Gutter Cat versus the Jets, and here's one that maybe also ties into sort of the school thing. Gutter Cat starts off, it's this kind of a cool, swingy type of feel to it. And then it goes into quotes from the musical West Side Story with the do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do. You know, it's a part in West Side Story with the Jets are one of the gangs. And that sort of ties into sort of a youth high school thing. So I think, again, there's that sort of connection of school and what happens after you leave high school. Next is Street Fight, which is just a short little, again, sort of, it immediately segues from the Gutter Cat versus the Jets thing. Another playoff on West Side Story there with that driving bass line and everything. Pow! Like, that's all from the musical, if you've ever seen the musical. Blue Turk is a lot of fun. It ends side A, and it's got kind of a swingy, bluesy thing. And again, Alice does this so well. I can just so picture him on a Broadway stage somewhere, maybe with a top hat and doing like a dance to this, or again, sort of playing like a character, very theatrical. And I always loved that about Alice. His albums, especially starting here, his albums start to, you know, maybe take on loose concepts. And again, they just have a feel of like a show, or there's kind of like a theme that, a mood or a theme that sort of runs through a lot of his albums, and this one has that. All right, side 2 opens up with probably my favorite song on this album, My Stars. And this is a, you know, maybe if you were making a deep cuts for Alice Cooper, this would be a pick for me. I love sort of the piano lines, these chromatic long piano lines, and it's got these really nice chord changes. This is another example of Bob Ezrin. This is a co-write between Alice and Bob, and all these like piano flourishes, the unique sort of classical like chord changes. If you listen to Kiss Destroyer, the song Great Expectations, that's another great example of Bob Ezrin. It has this very classical like chord progression to it, and you hear that in this. It's just a beautiful song, so well orchestrated, so well written, so melodic. And this also shows off Alex's flexibility here. He's able to do stuff like School's Out, where he's a little more nastier, but then he's able to do something like this, which is just shows off his range and his expression, where he's able to express himself in the melody lines and everything. It's just a great song. And again, it's when you put headphones on, you can sort of get taken away with it. Public Animal number 9. This always made me think of like a Rolling Stones-ish kind of bluesy number. It's a fun one, kind of a straight up maybe Rolling Stones or Lou Reed, Iggy Pop type of rock and roll type number. All right, then Alma Mater, and this ties in again to the sort of high school, after high school theme. And it's got the acoustic guitar sort of strumming thing, and it's sort of like a ballad, and Alice is singing through this like vocal effect, and it's sort of like this guy talk. I always get the feeling that it's like that guy, everybody else has moved on from high school, but this guy hasn't. He's still stuck in high school. Everybody else has gotten jobs and moved on, and this guy is still, you know, not going anywhere. And I love at the end of the song when Alice does the, hey man, I forget what he says exactly, but he says something like, don't forget about the coop. I hope you remember me, you know, and it's sort of that sentiment like everybody else is gone on with their lives, and hey, everybody, you know, what about me? I was the cool guy in high school. And again, Alice, you know, playing this character, and it's just great. And then the album ends with, and I talked about this one, grand finale, this orchestrated piece with the horns, almost like a big band type of thing. And it's just a cool way to end the album. It gives it, again, that sort of theatrical feeling. You've got this closing. The album begins with School's Out, And then it sort of ties into, again, this guy maybe going through life after school, and here you have the grand finale. And I love the way right at the end it does a short little quote from the West Side Story again, the da 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 pow, and it just ends on that. So an awesome album, super well produced. Maybe my second or third favorite Alice album. Billion Dollar Babies is number one. Welcome to My Nightmare is probably fighting it out for number two here. But I do really love this album. There's so much cool stuff going on in it. It's a great headphone album. So let me know in the comments down below, what do you guys think of Alice Cooper Schools Out? What are your thoughts on it? Let me know in the comments down below. Make sure you look for Lair of the Alchemist on all the social medias, Facebook and my Twitch stream, where I'm going to be starting to do live streams where I play bass along with a bunch of songs from bands that I've played with in the past, and I sit and talk metal. So go over to Twitch, look up Lair of the Alchemist, and follow me over there also. Okay, leave some comments down below, and until we see you again, make sure you rock hard, ride free.